medals, and didn't know the requirements to even get in the session. This week I'm going to grind for it. Well, that's what we like to hear. People wanting to work at it and get into the relevant sessions as well. So
yeah, just on the note there as well for that guy, whoever that is, welcome to SimSport. And if you need help getting your SA rating up and things like that, the guys on the servers will help you. Your SA improves by running closely with other cars. And as I said earlier, there's nothing these guys like more than to say, let's go do some laps and 4 or 5 if you just run around closely together, and that will help you get the SA rating that you need.
Yeah. So it's funny when you got people like saying, Jordan Ruddock, I'm still watching. On in big capital letters. I mean, it's always great to see these comments come through. I mean, I'm one of the big things that we've got now here at SimSport Racing. Big thank you to Mike Yao and Simply Race for this. Is that we have a restream chat. So any comment that is put on YouTube and Twitch will come through to my computer right now. And then Manel Elias says, I want to join then. Well, that's what we want to hear, Manel. Thank you very much for joining us and wanting to get involved here. We're fast approaching the final 30 minutes as Rich Smith now comes in for his second and final mandatory pit stop. As Chris Crossman runs a little bit wide there. Now that Porsche, I think those tyres are starting to jump off the cliff a little bit there, and that's why he's been running wide. Because when you think of it from this perspective, in some cases, the rear tyres on these GT3 cars are wider than the ones on the front. But they can be of a thinner profile, as that was a bit of a run wide there by the car up ahead of them. So Chris Crossman will quickly be. Yeah, that's a back marker just up ahead. I think that's the Jaguar, isn't it, of Richard Pixley?
It is.
Yeah,
it is. I'm just watching that Porsche. Sorry to interrupt. I'm just watching Chris through the last couple of corners, and he's looking like the rear end is getting a little bit loose on it. I mean, the initial incident where he ran a bit wide was in the braking zone, but then coming on the power there, he was certainly drifting, which cost him time. So I'm just wondering if he's got a tyre pressure issue or a tyre wear issue. But he's certainly he's struggling. He's having to use all his talent to keep Chris behind him now.
Well, let's hope he doesn't do an Alex Wurz and run out of talent in the latter stages. Yeah, I noticed the reason why it was the Jaguar, because I saw the Swiss flag on the end plates of the rear wing. That's how you can tell when that car is coming through, as in the terms of Richard Pixley, because it's got a Swiss flag on the front of the nose, and it's got a Swiss flag on both rear, as now Pixley has pitted. So the top four still being led by Archie Clifford Roberts, who's now on lap number 37 with a 16.375 second gap ahead of Dave Hedges. Crossman and Pinchbeck at the moment are battling for what is effectively de facto third on the road. But then you look at Dean Riley. Now, Dean Riley is 17.4 seconds behind this battle. However, the top five have yet to take their final mandatory pit stop. And there is Riley as we see him going up the hill with sparks flying from the back of the 488. There's James Hartnell, who rounds out the top six. So effectively, when all the top five have pitted, this is going to put James Hartnell and Regan Mitchell into the fight here, because they've done a really good job of mitigating the circumstances. We're now heading towards the final quarter of the race, Steve. And I think that Hartnell and Mitchell, if they get an opportunity, if they can get close enough to Clifford Roberts after he pits, they've got a chance of beating him out on the circuit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you say, it's all going to fall into place once these pit stops are done. And Hartnell and Mitchell are definitely going to be up there fighting for those podium spots. The man to watch, and you mentioned it, is Chris Pinchbeck, because I know Chris. I've raced with Chris for years, and I'll put a quid on it, and I'm a Yorkshireman, so that's a lot of money. I'll put a quid on the fact that he will not pit until there's less than 5 minutes to go.
Right. In response to that, is that new or old money?
It's paper money.
Yeah,
It's a pound note.
I was going to say it's worth as much as the paper it's printed on, Mr. Proudly.
It's collectible. It's got to have some value. Come on. But no, Chris will. I think Chris will leave it as late as possible to pit, and that will probably be within the last 5 minutes if I know Chris.
Yeah. So Mark Neuselings now finally takes his second and final mandatory pit stop. So the Dutch driver in the number 666 Bentley Continental GT rounds out the top 9 positions as Chris Crossman and Chris Pinchbeck still battling away. Sparks flying from both the rear diffusers of the Audi and the Porsche as they head. Well, it was from the Audi going through the exit of La Source and through into Rouge, and then it was the Porsche going through Radillon as Pinchbeck again closing, but not close enough as Cameron Fife says, let's go Pinchy. Everyone's cheering on the number 43 Audi driver in the I must admit that BioCircle livery looks absolutely wonderful. Fluorescent green, bit of black, a bit of contrast with the white. No, it makes that Audi look really, really smart, doesn't it?
It does, and it's very intimidating at the front with the endurance lights on as well. It's certainly a sight to behold, and probably not one that you want in your rearview mirrors. Mr. Crossman will be thinking right now, as actually Crossman runs a little bit wide there. He's definitely losing some grip on that rear end of that Porsche. You see how much tighter Chris Pinchbeck was through that corner, and he's gained quite a lot of ground on Mr. Crossman there.
Yeah, very, very true indeed. So we keep on board with Chris Pinchbeck, just coming up to half hour to go. Still several drivers. Chris Bowman, Adam Isalovic, Ranjith Kelsey, Dean Riley, Archie Clifford Roberts, Dave Hedges, and these two on your screen right now, Chris Crossman and Chris Pinchbeck, yet to serve their second and final mandatory pit stop. The back end of that Porsche looks very, very ropey at points in terms of how it's handling, but it seems like the Audi is able to keep its rear tyres working for longer, as now Pinchbeck still keeping with Crossman. And again, they both have decided not to pit this particular occasion, but Pinchbeck, I think, has got the better opportunity here because he knows that Crossman is starting to struggle. He can see what the Porsche is doing, how it's acting when Crossman's braking in a straight line, trying to rotate the car, put the power down, and try and go out of the corners.
I'm not going to say I disagree with you, Alex, but I disagree with you. I think.
Well, it's good to disagree. We agree to disagree, but
yeah, I think Pinchy needs to pit because I think if you look at the gap he's got behind him now, sort of Dean Riley, he's got to pit as well. James Hartnell's done his pit stop, so he's where he is. I think if Chris gets in the pits now and goes for the undercut, it'd serve him well. He'd be back. He'd be out in front of Mr. Crossman, I believe, but. Yeah, obviously Chris is the driver, and I've already said I think he'll leave it to the last 5 minutes. But I would, if I was Chris now, I'd be thinking I'm going to pull the pin. I'm going to go for that final pit stop and force Crossman's hand, because I think Crossman is just waiting now to see what Chris does, and he'll just cover off whatever Chris does.
Yeah, I think that's very, very true. But yeah, it's difficult to, as we keep on saying, it's difficult because these two. We keep on saying this, and I'm just going to reiterate this point, that they practice together. They know each other well. They know how the other one thinks. And what they're doing, you know what they're trying to do? They're trying to throw a spanner at us two commentators, aren't they? Deciding, yeah, I might pit, I might not pit. Might pit, might not pit. Well, at least in this game, you can't do what they do in Formula One and do a dummy walk out of the whole crew who then walk back into the pit garage. Joel Diaz has got a drive through. That would also be for track limits. So the track cuts once again coming in. Manel Elias asks, why is the pit lane so big for GT3 in Spa? Well, it's how the circuit is actually used by the GT3 fraternity, because there's one side for Formula One, the other side, which heads down towards Eau Rouge, is the one that is used for not just GT3, It's GT4. It's Fun Cup Benelux, the 24 hours of Spa-Francorchamps, which is held every year. So it is quite a lengthy pit lane, irrespective of which category you're in. And with the amount of cars that you can have in a GT3 field, normally it will be on the right-hand side of the hill, which is where they'll normally stop the cars.
I was just going to say, I believe that's it, isn't it, Alex? It's because of the amount of pit boxes they need for the GT3s, so that's why they run that section of the pits. But yeah, we ask the question every single time you enter the pits and you're driving all the way down that pit lane. It's a hell of a pit lane to have to drive down, and it's very frustrating.
Oh, Pinchbeck's made the move on Crossman.
He has.
He's managed. Now, I'm wondering, he must have gotten a better run coming through Radillon and got a good run on Crossman. Hey, no problem, Manel Elias. Happy to be able to educate, because that's one of the three main things about commentary. You've got to educate along with entertaining at the same time as well. So, but that was a great move from Chris Pinchbeck. I think he just knew that after a certain amount of time, he would have an opportunity to get past Chris Crossman. And what this does actually help Chris Pinchbeck in this respect now, Steve, is that he does have a little bit of clean air ahead of him, doesn't he?
He does, and I think now obviously the roles are reversed. Where I was saying a few minutes ago that Chris Pinchbeck needed to pit.
Oh, Hedges in the pits. Hedges in the pits with 26 minutes and 18 to go on the clock.
Yeah, that's going to show us where Dave is in relation to these two guys as well. But I think Chris needs to just keep the hammer down now and keep going. And I think it's on Chris Crossman to pit and see if he can force Pinchbeck into a pit stop to keep him close. Because as we can see, Pinchbeck's now sort of pulling a gap on Crossman and just stretching the gap a little bit.
Yeah, so in many respects, it was going to always be a case.
Nope, they're both staying out. They're both staying out again.
Again, they keep us guessing. They keep us guessing. This is... I don't know what to say, really. I've been talking all day anyway. 15 races and now a 2-hour enduro. Oh, mamma mia. Well, at least we're not...
They say practice makes perfect, mate, so keep going.
Speak for yourself, then.
Yeah, can you throw a few races my way so I can get some more practice?
Well, you'd have to travel down south for that, mate. Considering where you're located.
I'm not sure I could go that far. I'd probably pass out.
Oh, dearie me. Think how I feel when I have to fly overseas.
Do they still take pound notes down south?
No, you might be lucky if you go out to Scotland. Well, hey, I'm being honest there. I'm being honest, and you just had to throw that ooh in there, didn't you?
Mate, I'm not even going to reply now. That's it.
That's okay. We'll agree to disagree then, Steve, as we normally do.
Absolutely, mate. Dave Hedges is exiting the pits now, so let's just see where on the timing screen where he pops into the equation. 5th place is that?
Yeah.
So
that's not actually no, it's 6th place. So he'll be behind James Hartnell.
There, yep, it's just dropped down now. Yeah.
So I think that's a pretty good call there from Dave. He'll have a fresh set of rubber. Also, one of the other things that he'll have going for him is that if he's refueled, he doesn't need to put fuel all the way through. He just needs to put enough to cover that eventuality of lack of, not getting to the finish line because you haven't fueled up enough. And we have seen that before, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. It's very easy to make that mistake, and maybe just try and cut it a little bit too fine and literally run out a lap before the end, or even a couple of corners before the end, which is very disappointing. But interestingly, Dave is showing us round about sort of 4.5 seconds behind James, so certainly an incentive to chase hard. And Regan Mitchell, who had cleared all his pit stops very early on, he's now moved up into 7th place. 11 seconds behind Dave, so that's a good solid position for Regan there, and I'm not so sure he won't make up another 1 or 2 when the pit stops are all finished.
Yep, so we still have 6 drivers still to pit with 22 minutes and 57 seconds to go as Crossman, following Pinchbeck, through Eau Rouge and Radillon down the Kemmel Straits. These two still have yet to make their final mandatory pit stop, as have and it's the same for Ranjiv Kalsi in 8th, Adam Isalovic in 14th, with Archie Clifford Roberts and Dean Riley, the other 2 drivers, still yet to pit. And
interestingly, Chris Pinchbeck, as we're seeing on the screen, isn't managing to put any time between himself and Chris Crossman, which I thought he might do, but no. Their stations holding and the gap's staying the same. Chris Crossman's doing very well to hang on to him, so it's going to be the pit stop strategy that wins that position, I think.
Yeah, and it's about who decides. Do the drivers go full power in Eau Rouge or lift the throttle slightly? Oh, Clifford Roberts, as I'd just say that reference the question from Manel Elias, now jumps into the pits with just under 22 minutes remaining. So Archie Clifford Roberts, again, his strategy calls in these endurance races have been nigh on impeccable, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, you match up the strategy calls with the absolute outright pace that the lad's got, then he's a difficult man to beat. And as I said earlier, the only man that's really come close this season was Kev Critchley, who unfortunately isn't able to race with us every round. But I'm hoping he will be back before the end of the season just to give us another sort of battle with Archie. Because it's great to see, when the strategies really come into play and you get 2 drivers like that are incredibly quick having a good battle.
Well, Manel Elias, in order to answer your question, well, if they're going through at 5th gear at 250 kilometers an hour, they're literally, the throttle is being kept where it's meant to be kept. So they're effectively going nigh on full throttle through Eau Rouge, and it depends on the conditions as well. So you can see that the daytime's starting to come back as the local time hits nearly 5 o'clock here at Stavelot in Belgium for the 7th round of SimSport Racing ACC Season 3 GT3, as there is Joao Diaz. Gianluca De Luca has got a penalty for the track limit, so that'll be a drive-through for the 135 Aston Martin. But yes, you're spot on, Chris Crossman, because effectively now we are now effectively what's going to be called happy hour, or happy 20 minutes, if you want to call it that, because as the sunlight starts beaming down back on Spa-Francorchamps, the tyres will then start getting some residual heat back in. Oh, but that's a run wide from Chris Crossman, a mistake that we don't characteristically see from the number 3 that often.
Yeah, just talking about track temps as well, it is starting to go up now. It dropped to a low of 9 degrees, it's now back up to 10, so it's going to start creeping up very slowly. Not big differences, but it is going up slowly, so things should stabilise a bit for the lads.
So we're getting closer and closer to the end of the race here, and it's now down to, out of these 2, who will blink first, because still 5 cars still to pit. The 2 on your screens at home. Chris Pinchbeck. Interesting question here, Steve. I don't know if you might be able to shed some light on this. Cameron Fife has actually asked me, what's the loss of time with a perfect pit stop? I think it was around about a 30-second pit stop, you say, wasn't
it? Well, it depends. If you take in tyres in a pit stop, the tyre change takes 30 seconds. So that's not including the drive in and drive out of the pits. I did say earlier, I can't remember, ashamedly, exactly how long the pit stop takes at Spa, but I think you'd be looking at a good 20 to 30 seconds driving time, so you're probably looking at about 50 seconds roughly in pit and out. But that also depends on you hitting your pit box perfect, because if you don't, it slows the pit stop down while the mechanics move the car into the correct position. But I was just looking at the timing sheets, and we've seen Chris Pinchbeck and Chris Crossman racing closely now for a number of laps. Just to bring the viewers' attention to the best lap times, Chris Pinchbeck's best lap is a 2:18.432. Chris Crossman's is a 2:18.477. Chris Pinchbeck's last lap was a 2:19.719. Chris Crossman's was a 2:19.770. So they're just literally locked together on the times. Two different cars, two different drivers, but absolutely matched for pace.
Yeah, Kieran Vidago says, yes, boys, looks like it's a good race. I think he agrees with you with regards to the pit stop, saying, yeah, I think it was 50 seconds lost, looking at the time that Archie Clifford Roberts lost, and agrees with the fact that they are smashing time. So, yeah, I mean, with 17 minutes and 20 seconds still to go, it is, with the amount of time. Now, I think this could be the battle, possibly, when you look at it from this perspective. You still got 3 of the top 5 still to pit. So you got Chris Pinchbeck, Chris Crossman, and then Dean Riley. And Dean Riley has yet to serve his second mandatory pit stop. And
Yes.
when you look at it from, it also depends on how much fuel they've got in the cars. So if let's say they need to put in enough whilst they're putting the fuel in, putting the tires on whilst the fuel's been putting on board, they'll have to put less fuel in, which means that they can run harder and they can go faster as well, which means that they could battle for the latter part of the top 5.
Yeah, anything is possible. I mean, I think that I'm not sure about Chris Crossman, but I think Chris Pinchbeck will have fueled literally to do all but the last lap. He will literally, when he comes into fuel up, he will literally be just putting a litre or 2 in at maximum. To put 1 litre of fuel in is 3 seconds in the pits. So that's what they're aiming for, is the least amount of time stopped. So he will be. I think he'll put a litre in.
So a splash and dash on the cards then, effectively.
Absolutely. It's just 2 hours of racing at Spa, and they're still absolutely flat out through Eau Rouge and Radion. Absolutely amazing. And I'm going to risk it. Touch wood. Have we seen any serious incidents through Eau Rouge yet?
No.
Great. I've said it now.
And we still have just under 15 and a half minutes to go.
Yeah, sorry guys.
You could have left it another 14 minutes and changed there, Steve, but no, you just had to, didn't you?
Well, I know how hard these guys have been practicing, so they're all very, very competent and very capable drivers. So I don't expect to see any, but let's move on.
Yes, moving swiftly on, as they would say. 15 minutes to go. And Chris Pinchbeck and Chris Crossman now on lap number 45 of this, what's been a very, very interesting strategic 2 hours of Spa-Francorchamps here in the Ardennes Forest in the Stavelot region. And one of my local commentary haunts is Karting Genk, which is just around about 90 kilometers north of this very circuit. And one of the things that you know what? I'm going to say this. The weather has been, there's been warmth and there's been cold. There's been none of that microclimatic, sudden downpour of rain or thunder showers as we normally see at Spa, which has been a refreshing change, let's say.
Yeah, we were sort of discussing the weather, shall we say, on the server last night when some of the lads did a 2-hour practice race last night just to see how the temperatures changed, and we always set the weather up with the same percentage chance of rain, but obviously with a 2-hour race it's spread over a longer period of time, and that was the biggest fear. And I know Archie was very vocal in saying he did not want rain at all, under no circumstances. So there was a little bit of a few of us were sort of thinking, I hope there's a shower, I hope there's a little bit, just to spice things up. No malice meant, no hardship,
No.
just to spice it up a little bit. But yeah, it's been dry. It's been good conditions for the guys. A little cloudy at the moment. That'll keep the temperatures down a little bit longer, but it's still 5:42 a.m. on the server, and it's 11 degrees on the track temp at the moment. So all good.
Indeed. So there is Dave Hedges still rounding out the top 6 positions, 2.3 seconds behind James Hartnell, as some drivers just making their way down through the Kemmel Straight. It looks like Peter Hrobar just off in the distance in the number 32 Audi. But still, we've not seen anyone blink in the top, three of the top 4 positions, and that includes Pinchbeck and Crossman. I think you're right, Steve. I think they're leaving it until the dying moments of the race to make sure they get their opportunity to put one up on the other.
Absolutely, yeah. That they're just racing against each other now because they know that is the battle for position that they're in. I'll just take you back to a couple of rounds ago at Monza when James Hartnell took the victory, and in the interview, you said to him about taking the battle to Archie, and he sort of said he was well planted. He was planted, and he knew where his battle lies, and maybe it wasn't up at the front. But if he brings it home in second place tonight, which at the moment he's looking like doing, that's really going to cement his place at second in the championship as we stand, and he's the only one taking the battle anywhere near Archie. So he's absolutely outstanding from James. He's really he's doing himself justice.
Yeah, very much the case. As Dave Hedges, I think that's Gianluca De Luca in the Aston Martin just behind, in the fantastic R Motorsport colours. So getting into the last 11 or so minutes of this race, and Hedges, I think, is just, I mean, look at it from this perspective, because we were talking, obviously Kieran Vidago made a very good point of this as well, that with the pit stops that Pinchbeck and Crossman do. Now, this is a question I really need to ask. On Assetto Corsa Competizione, when you pit, are you able to refuel and put tyres on at the same time, or do you have to do it one after the other?
No, you do it at the same time. That's why if you just take fuel, it's dependent upon how much fuel you take. But it takes, if you take in tyres, it's 30 seconds to swap the tyres, but the fuel is quicker, so they refuel it while you're putting tyres on.
Okay, that answers my question completely there, Steve. So that makes a lot more sense, and also I can use that for future reference. Now, Ranjiv Kalsi is now making it now Chris Bowman, I think, just went off the track. So Ranjiv Kalsi now is pitting in the number 47 Rinaldi Racing Ferrari 488. So Chris Bowman, I think, just had a little bit of an off-track excursion there.
Looking, we've got Adam Azalovic still to pit as well, further down the field. And then, as you say, it's just Dean Riley, Chris Crossman and Chris Pinchbeck.
That is the $64,000 question. Who's going to pit first between the two out front at the moment? Because initially that will drop them as right. Crossman is still kept going. Where is Pinchbeck? Pinchbeck is up ahead.
He's there, yeah. He's on the track.
So these two, if I'm honest, are really, really they're still keeping us guessing, big time keeping us guessing on how they're now going to proceed through the last 9 minutes of the race as the two leaders make their way down.
I'm just adding up the time gaps to see if Crossman and Pinchbeck will come out behind Regan Mitchell. That will be awesome for Regan Mitchell if they do, because obviously that's 2 positions he's going up. from 7th place, and he's run the most extreme strategy, I would say, to anyone else, because he got his first pit stop done really early, if you remember, and then came in on the hour. So he's been out there sort of 52 minutes now since he last pitted. 7th and potentially looking at going up to 5th.
Daniel Parker says, I'm curious to see if Pinchbeck and Crossman will pit before Clifford Roberts catches them both. Well, that's a very interesting proposition.